Hi guys, Tim Dorian here. This is my mod 3 for EDL 853 about the special education interviews. So I interviewed Dr. McCall and Mr. Graham. It started off as Mr. Graham, just him, and then Dr. McCall came in and sat down, and it just kind of continued on there. I planned for about 15 or 20 minute interview, ended up lasting about an hour and 45 minutes. So got a lot of information from them. Miss Roach is a para in our building. I've worked with her previously, worked with her last year for a semester. Don't have too much contact with her this year, just kind of dragged her in from across the hall for a couple minutes. And then Dr. Taylor, he's one of our administrators in the building. He's one of our assistant principals. And we've been working together more and more closely throughout the year, so snatched him up as well. Now, with our child find procedures, it was very evident that we were not well versed on the practice or the policies or whatever of how we're going to go out and find those kids. We are at high school, so that makes it a little bit different. I know my wife has been at elementary school, so they have a lot different protocols than we have. Our district, everybody kind of devolved to, our district, they do things. We don't really know what those things are 100%, but we know that they happen because we get the kids, once they get into high school. So that's just kind of how that all shook out. There's a policy of, in middle school, from my own experience, we go through and the kids, if we have somebody that wants to we want to get tested, we can refer them to the school psychologist or social workers and kind of start that ball rolling. But then it's kind of outside of our hands and is taken over by either the co-op or the district themselves. So our most challenging part, Dr. McCall and Mr. Graham, they were talking about what's doing, but the most difficult part was doing what's best for kids. This year have been given a lot more paperwork to do and a lot more hoops to jump through, and they were commenting that takes away a lot of time from just interacting with individuals, interacting with their kids. They also talked about the social emotional value or the lack of value that social emotional learning gets placed on it at times, especially with our SPED kids. They're in the behavioral or the emotionally disturbed room. So it's a little bit different from them or for them, but they would like to see. They both commented very highly on how they would like to see that incorporated more into the curriculum. Miss Roach was talking about that she doesn't have enough time to work with her co-teachers to really help plan or help to modify assignments before they're given out, things like that. And Dr. Taylor said his biggest thing in terms of SPED is making sure that the general ed teachers are following the IEPs as they're written, more so than just in general, that's what it said. No, it needs to be followed specifically. Most rewarding part, everybody universally, it was, when that light bulb strikes, is when the kid gets success. It's when the parents and the kid are coming together with the teachers and everybody's really getting it. And seeing those kids grow and be successful. And I think that's why we're all in education, and we all kind of get that high from seeing those kids do well and seeing them to succeed. The advice that they had on supervision of the special ed staff, Dr. McCall and Mr. Graham both commented on communication. That's a common theme throughout all of these, throughout all the questions was communicate. Do it, consistently, do it effectively, and do it honestly. And that those critical comments, they do need to happen in order for people to grow and in order to serve our kids ultimately. Ms. Roach said be specific with those expectations. If you want me to work one-on-one with a kid, tell me that. If you want me to work with a group, tell me that. Making sure that they know what they're supposed to be taking care of. And Dr. Taylor from the administrative point of view, is knowing what everybody's job is. What is the SPED teacher supposed to do? What is the SPED para supposed to do? What is the gen ed teacher supposed to do? What's the admin? What is their responsibilities within the whole ball of wax? But with so many people being involved, that's where Dr. Taylor said that he wished, starting off, this is his 4th year, I believe. When he was starting off, that's something that he said that he was that really struggled with. How do you work effectively with parents? Dr. McCall and Mr. Graham, they were talking about that because of their kids, because they have a relatively small group of kids. I think they have about 12 kids altogether, just at different points throughout the day, that helping those individual parents get through those IEPs. Dr. McCall mentioned several times that a lot of the parents that they're working with have their own mental challenges, their own mental issues, where sometimes that makes things very difficult, that the parents are giving input of, well, this is what they're doing at home, and it's not jiving with what's going on at school, or it really just, 1 and 1's adding up to 16. It's just way off base. But explaining that legalese of the IEPs, explaining, what it means directly, what it means, in plain English, for our parents, and that helps to build that trust with them, so that both sides are trusting each other, not just the parents trusting the teachers to know what's best, but also the teachers trusting the parents to know their kids the best. Miss Roach, she said, she doesn't really talk with the parents often. She has contact with them during IEP meetings and says, this is kind of how he's doing. He's struggling with this, or whatever the case may be. But outside of that, there wasn't any real meaningful contact. And then Dr. Taylor talked about patience and communication. Again, communication. And making sure that the parents know that you care about the kids. The parents know that you care about them as a family. Making sure that the teachers know that you're doing the things to help everybody be successful, to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page, and being patient when families don't understand things all the way, and why things can or cannot, more importantly, cannot happen. And then, how are we working with regular ed teachers? Dr. McCall and Mr. Graham, who I personally have worked together with for several students, and that's kind of what our conversation kept kind of bouncing back to, was that we had that communication. It was very informal at times. It was very formal when it needed to be, like in the case of an IEP or something like that. But just to have those regular check-ins. Hey, how's this kid doing? How's that kid doing? What about this assignment? They were struggling on this. Here's their grade. Those basic educational conversations. Mr. Graham he talked about that having relationships with the teachers helps him to know which teachers are going to help their student, these specific ED students. But also to know, when he sees that schedule in August saying, hey, talk to our counselors, hey, this schedule's not going to work. We need this class changed to this teacher, and this to happen here, that to happen there. A lot of times, because of those just personality conflicts, and really trying to do, what's best for kids. And Miss Roach, she was talking about that in working with the teachers, how she works, most closely with them is identifying and assisting those struggling students, helping the ones, who need that direct assistance. Dr. Taylor talking about making sure that the teachers have the resources that they need, whether that's the SPED teachers, gen ed teachers, paras, whomever, to take care of those students, to handle them in the classroom, and to help them to be successful. Advice for a first-year administrator. I thought Dr. Taylor had it kind of, he had a profound statement here. Lead with emotional intelligence. And I kind of said, oh, okay. And I go, what do you mean by that? And he said, just kind of be mindful of everybody's emotion within the room when you're talking about a kid. If the kid's in there, how's the kid feeling about things? How's the parent feeling about things? Remember, that's their baby. So make sure we're treating them that way, and make sure that we're being respectful of that relationship. make sure we're being respectful of the teachers and not just completely discounting them and just saying, oh yeah, you're wrong, your parents always right, things like that. But most importantly, that when you feel the emotion starting to rise in the room, that you have to be the one as the administrator to kind of put out those fires and to calm the room back down so that everybody can work together and be successful. And Dr. McCall and Mr. Graham, they both agreed on this idea of they're all our students, all SPED students, all Gen Ed students, whomever they are, as a school system, as a school building. We need to make sure that we're treating them that way, that it's not, oh, here's the SPED kids over here, here's the Gen Ed kids over here, that it has to be, they're all of our students, and we have to make sure that we're not just paying that lip service, that we're actually creating the structure and the environment within our building to make sure that we're able to get those things accomplished. The role of the special education teacher and the building principal. Ms. Roach was very basic on this one, saying, just that they make the schedules and they, tell us who we're going to help. Dr. McCall, he just goes, well, we tell them to come to an IEP meeting, and that's, a lot of what it is. But with their specific kids, Mr. Graham added that the ed kids, the ED kids, they're typically more of a handful. So they do happen to have more office referrals and things like that. Dr. Taylor, he was talking about that they need to have that cooperative aspect, right? They need to have the communication between one another. They need to know what everybody within the school is doing, what everybody in the ed department is taking care of. Characteristics they seek in aspiring administrators. Dr. McCall and Mr. Graham, they were both talking about making sure that the administrators know the kids, know the Gen Ed kids, know the special ed kids. They talked about the friends of the program, where they're the kids that are kind of borderline. They're kids, especially with their specific program, that they can be the hall walkers, is what we call them a lot of times. And making sure that we're not just jumping all over those kids when we see them out roaming the halls, but trying to find those root causes versus just applying to the or appealing, to the surface cause. Why are you in the hall? Hey, how you doing? And building those relationships. And again, communication. But it was really interesting to hear him talk about the friends of the program there. A lot of kids that I knew. But Ms. Roach, making sure that they have realistic expectations, that you're not going to turn a kid from having one credit their junior year to graduating their senior year. It's just not going to happen. And she was talking about a specific student when we were discussing that. But just to make sure that we're setting those realistic expectations and goals. And then Dr. Taylor, he was talking about the having patience, being willing to learn, and then again, communicate. So people like talking about their jobs. I like to talk, and they like to talk. And this hour of meeting that I had kind of planned for ended up taking me about 3 times as long. But that's fine. It was very interesting, very informative. Relationships help. Relationships between teachers and students, between students and parents and student, everybody. Everybody's got to work together. Many hands make light work, right? That's kind of the old saying there. Everybody wants good things for the kids. That's why we're involved in this business. That's why we are educators. That's why we are participating here. And then largest factor, communication. Communicate. That's the common theme throughout the whole thing. That, and at least according to Dr. McCall and Mr. Graham, that good pairs are hard to find, and when you find them, you got to hang on to them. My future role, I'm going to facilitate that communication. I'm going to set up that schedule to make it happen, and I'm going to provide the resources that my staff, as well as my students and their parents, need. That's my job, to clear the way and make things happen. And then I'm going to educate myself. I'm not just going to rely on my SPED department to make sure that we are in compliance, because ultimately it is on me to ensure that. So that's all I got. Thank you very much.